Hi, welcome to another batch of classic bookmarks. A couple of years ago, we realized that we had been producing Bookmark for 30 years, some 425 episodes. To celebrate, we chose 15 shows to enhance and broadcast. The reception has been terrific. Viewers got a real kick out of seeing or re-seeing the conversations with Toni Morrison, Ray Bradbury, William Styron, Alexander McCall Smith, and many others. So, we have chosen another 15 shows from the archives. Interviews with George Saunders, Margaret Atwood, E.O. Wilson, Walter Mosley, Albert Murray, James Haskins, and 9 others. Of course, we are continuing to produce new shows with new writers and old writer friends. But in the meantime, we hope you enjoy watching these classics as much as we enjoyed making them.
Rick Bragg's phenomenally successful memoir, Over But The Shoutin, tells of growing up in a hard place with a soft mama. I spoke with this Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter for the New York Times at Birmingham Southern's annual conference, Writing Today. Bragg's book tells of his impoverished childhood, his alcoholic and absent father, and his remarkable mother. Bragg attributes his survival and success to his mother, who raised him in a place that most people wouldn't imagine even exists anymore.
A lot of the people in that part of the world are one generation removed, or not even that, from hard mill worker, people who sweat for a living. 3 generations removed from farmers, but more recently, they worked in the pipe shops, they worked in the rubber plant, they worked in the cotton mills where my brother works now, and they work hard for a living. And I think it doesn't matter what color they are, doesn't matter, not really even whether they're poor folks or blue collar working class folks or what. They can all kind of look right over their shoulder. Not all of them, but a lot of them look right, because I'm sure there are some effete Southerners that'd be insulted by by this, but a lot of the people that I love there can look right over their shoulder and see somebody who's got little scars on their arm from the pipe shop foundry, and I just think that kind of hard work breeds not just good folks, but great storytellers. I believe that, because you sweat all day long, you come home, you don't want to sit silent. You want to rejoice in what you've earned. So I really believe it's bred some great storytellers.
Aside from that job offer that took you from Jacksonville to your first full-time job, my reading of your story is that you think the moment when your daddy gave you that box full of books to read is one of the great single turning points. Since you've spent some time writing about your father, how did, on the one hand, he's a fairly disreputable guy and a source of great pain for you. On the other hand, there was this wonderful thing that he did. Well, how about your daddy?
Well, I think a lot of my daddy was like a lot of men in that time and place, and I said that in the book, that there's nothing special about us in that regard. My daddy, went off, fought a war, came back different, drank too hard, and didn't treat his family right. But my mother absorbed all that pain, or most of it. I saw it, I didn't necessarily always feel it. And I think, I was prepared pretty much, I guess, to go into the rest of my life not liking him at all, maybe even hating him a little bit. But the truth is, I did get to see him one last time before he died, and he gave me a .22 Remington single-shot rifle and a box of books. And the rifle burned up in a house fire, but the books I carried with me. I didn't keep them all. My mom sold some at a yard sale, and some of them just went away the way books do, but I still have a few of them. And yeah, I mean, the fact that he thought about me at the end of his life and bothered to go out and find me some books or give me some of his was...
How do you know to do that? How did he know to do that?
Because
Books were not a big part of his
I guess
life.
somehow he had talked to my mama on the phone. He'd heard about me. He'd heard some things about me that I didn't think he'd heard. He'd heard once that I had a good game, and it was a softball or baseball game, I can't remember, but that he'd heard I'd had a good game against this school. And I'll never forget thinking, well, how did he know that? You know, and so maybe I'm not going to try to make this maudlin, because I do not think he cared very much about us even toward the end of his life. But at least he was thinking about us from time to time, and that is important.
I don't know. Let me ask you this, and you can respond any way you like. It seems to me that you've decided that the reason your father was the way he was because of those truly horrible experiences he had in Korea. And that is a decision which was emotionally a damn useful decision for you to make.
Right.
Do you think that, I mean, looking back, you know, with even more distance, was that you really think that is the case, or was it psychologically so necessary for you to think that was the case?
It's a very good question. I think yes to both of those, because do I think that what he went through altered him? I think it would alter anybody. Do I know, because I know anything about psychiatry?
Yeah.
Do I think, do I know for a fact? No, I don't know. But I believe, and I have to believe, that it did, because otherwise he's just a man who treated his family bad and drank too much.
Right.
I absolutely need to believe that he went through what he said he went through, and that he was changed by it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no rationalization for it, and try to get through a long day without a rationalization.
No way. Well, one of the things that I think sets your memoir apart from a lot of others, and I've read a good many memoirs in which there's a good deal of pain. People who had difficult childhoods, you know, abusive parents or downright hideous circumstances, much worse than yours.
Oh,
even.
absolutely.
But one of the things that I think really sets yours apart is it has a heroine. It has a character who is I mean, I don't think you overdid it. I'm not saying you made your mother into a saint, but a remarkable woman and a very likable woman.
I tried hard to turn her into a saint. I think that was the only way that the story could be written.
Why is that?
Because I never wanted to write a book where I talked about, oh, how hard we have it, how hard we had it. But if there's a victory in that somewhere, if there is this heroic figure in there, then you can take that, and my mom had I'm not explaining this very well, but my mother really did drag us up and down 1,000,000 miles of cotton field. My mom really did, you know.
On the end of a sack.
Right, on the end of a cotton sack. My mom, my mama really did, you know, take in washing and ironing. She really did do everything she could do to give us a chance give me a chance to do things like this. And I got to hide behind her skirts in the book the same way I got to hide behind them when I was a little kid, when she would protect me from her dad. I was able to, by just telling a simple story about sacrifices that she made, which are not that different from what many mothers make. And so many people have written and said, I did that. You know, I did that. My mother did that. My daddy did that. My daddy made those sacrifices. And sometimes they're not even poor folks, but they made sacrifices in other ways for their children. That gave me someone to build the story around. And, you know, I don't think I could have written it. I don't think there's any way I could have written it if I hadn't had her to hide behind.
Well, the picture of your mother on the cover is a wonderful picture. Everybody likes it, and it's a fine cover. I searched through the book to look for any picture of your father. I didn't find one. Is that a purposeful omission, or do you just didn't have a picture of your father?
Not really. I only have one of him, and I don't think it was like really purposeful. I think we just kind of didn't.
Okay.
It's about like that big. But I also wanted this to be. I did not want this to be a book where we paired my mother and my father off against each other in any way.
Okay.
My daddy had a lot of fine qualities, as someone told me, and I believe he did when he wasn't drinking. I just never really got to see him, and that's a great regret of my life. I wanted, I write about my daddy in about 3 chapters. I write about my mother in about, at least peripherally, in about 30. And there's a reason for that. I mean, I knew my daddy well for 6 years off and on. I lived in my mother's house until I was 18. I watched her wait to eat until we were done. And I watched her do without. So I didn't want to write a book about my mother and my daddy. I wanted to write a book about my mother primarily, where people saw what she'd survived in the early part of our lives. And of course, one of those things she survived was my dad.
For me, one of the high moments in the book, a place where your reporting duties touch nicely with the heroine of your story, your mother, is when you're talking with her about the Susan Smith case. The woman who told a story about how her children were taken from her.
Yeah. We were all fooled, but I was badly fooled, I guess, because I didn't want to believe that Susan Smith would roll her 2 sons down a boat ramp in the dark. I think a lot of us didn't want to believe that. When I was talking to my mom about it, just a little bit, she said, I asked her, I said, what would have happened if I'd been one of us? And she said something to the effect of, well, I'd be dead now, because no way would I let. And then I think I knew, but we didn't do anything about it. I think that's one place where we really kind of let, I don't want to say the public, because that sounds kind of lofty, but we definitely let our readership down. We should have asked that question sooner. I should have. And I think other reporters probably were asking it, but they still didn't really come out with it until after she confessed. So that's one time where I think I should talk to my mom on every story. I'd probably do a lot better.
It's not supposed to be a 50-50 proposition.
Right.
The balance is your balance. Your mother is the center of the book.
Right.
But there's also, to take this one generation further, there's also a good deal in your book about your brothers.
Sure.
Now, what interests me, and I think it would interest any kind of, you don't have to be a sociologist to be interested in this, that you and your brothers all lived through, genetically, you're your parents' children, you all lived in the same places through more, you're fairly close in age, but the 3 of you are not alike. You're not, and in fact, you have a lament for one brother who's not doing particularly well, and then a great deal of affection for another brother who's obviously a salt of the earth. And I bet you've thought about that. Why you become the person you are, and then each of your 2 brothers so different?
Well, I think first off, I guess I better say that affection I have for I feel for both of them in a way that is just as much for one as the other. They're both smarter than me, and I love them both. I never tell them that, because you don't say things like that in rural Alabama. You don't walk up to your brother and say, I love you. You don't do that stuff. First off, they probably hit you. But circumstances. My older brother Sam. We did have the same parents, and we grew up in the same house. But my older brother Sam, being the oldest, had to shoulder more of the responsibility. This is an old story, same old story. The oldest have to shoulder the responsibility for the other children when there is a shortcoming in the family. Like in this case, my dad. And my brother Sam went out and dug coal out of the mud. I'll never forget watching him do that, so that we would have coal for a heater. had a coal burning heater. This sounds like Depression era stuff, but this is the 1960s.
Right.
You know, he really did go out and work so that he could have things for himself that I did too later on, but he had to work harder and more. He had to come in from school, and he'd go like help my Uncle Ed break down truck tires, you know, to make a few dollars. He helped. By the time I got old enough to do some of that, there was less need for it. We were already a little older. Life had gotten a little easier. Not a great deal, but life had gotten some easier. So circumstances, I think, cheated Sam out of a lot of things. He's smart. He really is. And he could have done a lot of things. I said once, you know, he can take anything apart and put it back together again, and I just stand there looking at it dumbfounded.
Right.
My little brother, Mark, is the same way. He's brilliant in ways that I'm just a total fool. He can sight down a 2x4 and tell you by sighting down it like a rifle barrel whether it's true or not, and how far off it is if it's not true. You know, he can do anything, make anything with his hands. Do arithmetic in his head that would befuddle me. I can't even do long division. He's that bright. He just happened to kind of stumble into the same trap that I think my daddy did, but not nearly so deeply, and not nearly so quickly. And I believe he's going to be fine.
Yeah, that shows too.
Yeah.
No, when I remarked that there was a kind of a lament about your kid brother, it's
right.
a lament based on affection, the same as your happiness with your older brother. Not that you don't love him.
If I could ever get anything, through to him, and you can't really talk about this one thing, he'd punch me. But you know, the only real worry I've had in my life, except for my mom, trying to make sure my mom's all right and take care of her and make sure that everything's okay. And my brother Sam shares that worry. It's just, you know, making sure that when I'm an old man, that my little brother Mark is around to still make fun of me. You know, I want that to happen.
Taking care of your mother. Now, one of the things that occurred to me early in this book, and you talk about your own lack of expertise in mathematics, what you needed was somebody to explain mortgages. Not mathematics, but time payments.
Yeah.
You wanted to buy your mother a house, and everybody reading the book says, boy, that's a great idea, and the sooner the better. You knew that you could buy houses on time,
yeah,
right?
I figured that out. But this is the truth, is, and I think I said it in the book as accurately as I can say it. If you grow up the way that we grew up, and I'm not whining, because my playing field has been level for a long time. You know, I've been fine for a long time. If anything, I've had great advantages. But there's always a feeling that the good things in life are just temporary. There's a feeling that it'll all go away, because you've seen it go away. You've seen the kind of cozy, certainly not comfortable, but kind of, you know, like we would be comfortable in a little house, in my grandma's house, and then my daddy'd come and we'd go away for a while, and then there'd be uncertainty and all those things. And again, this gets kind of a psychological babble, but I guess what I'm saying is that you always think that the good things in your life may be temporary. This may be temporary for me. I know people roll their eyes and smirk and say, "How can, you know, you've won the Pulitzer Prize, and you work at the New York Times, and you've written a good book." But still, I mean, I always think, you know, Bear Bryant used to think that if he ever had a losing season, he'd have to go back to Fordyce, Arkansas, and plow. And I'm nowhere on Bear's level, but I do think that it could be temporary and that it could go away. And I wanted her house to be free and clear. I wanted it to be something that no one under any circumstances could ever take away from her. So I paid cash for it. And it took longer, but we paid cash for it. And now it's going to be there. It's going to be there forever.
Well, that is a wonderful moment in the book when you finally do save up enough money to pay cash for the house and move your mother into it. And she loves it.
I think she does. At
Yeah.
first, she was very lost in it. She would, it was a little too big for her, I think, and she was a little lost, and she would kind of wander from place to place. But now she told me the other day. She said, "Oh, honey, I've got used to it now." But I think she liked it.
Sure.
It's got things in it that make life easier. She doesn't have to tote in wood to stay warm. I mean, she just turns the dial on the central heat and air. And central heat and air might not be a big deal to most people, but believe me, to hit that little thing and hear that air click on is an amazing thing for some folks. And she, it's got one of those ovens that you don't have to bend over to check to see whether the biscuits are, it's up high, and I just think she's feeling at home there, and she's covered it up in flowers like I knew she would.
And has it got a lot of furniture in it?
No, that's the only thing she
Is this a family trait?
well,
Having no furniture?
We actually, she's lived her whole life in houses, in little bitty houses, that were completely covered up and cluttered. Because I swear sometimes it seemed like there'd be a couch sitting on top of a couch sometimes. It just was that cluttered. And she doesn't want that. She wants to move around in space, and I think that's one reason why I don't have much furniture. We'd hate to sit like this all the time. And so now you could almost play handball in there. But she one thing she did do that is worth talking about. She fixed me a room, and she fixed it the way she would have fixed it if we'd had that house when I was a little kid. And it I don't know if she did it on purpose, but it's got a globe in it, a earth globe. It's got a little desk you can sit and write if you want to. The bed is not shoved up against a wall, and so you've got it's a room like a boy would have a room. It's got a gun rack with a fishing rod on it. It's that kind of room, and every time I go in there,
That's the room you would have had as a teenager, a little boy, if you had been a middle-class family in the 60s.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And I've got it now. I don't get to stay there very much, but I've got it.
I was, as I read through, I was impressed, in a sense, with your honesty about your defensiveness about other people's educations. It comes up a number of times, and I thought, this man is, not only is he defensive, but he knows he's defensive, and he's made it a theme of his book. Then you get the Neiman Fellowship, and you go to Education Central in Cambridge. How do you think that's changed you now? Are you comfortable with hanging around with a lot of Ivy League graduates and PhDs?
No, I was always more or less comfortable with it. I was just cognizant of the difference. And unfortunately, a lot of these folks would make you cognizant of the differences between you. I was once joking with a reporter who had gone to Yale, I think, and I said, well, I'm not real bright. And that's something we Southerners say, because that means we're about to take your money. Or we're about to trade cards with you and or sell you a three-legged mule. I mean, usually most people are bright enough to know when we say we're not real bright, what we're getting ready to do is get you. And he didn't know that. And he said, well, that's okay. I'm not real bright. That's okay. That's all right. You're doing all right. And but I think going to Harvard was funny. The nicest thing that happened was, so I was getting ready to go there, and my brother Sam, I went home to Alabama first before going up there. And we were sitting around with a bunch of good old boys. We were out leaning on a pickup truck, just talking about nothing really. And just out of the blue. And these are guys who we talk about fishing, we talk about women, we talk about dogs, we talk about, hunting, but you don't talk about higher education. And these guys who work with their hands. And he said out of the blue, Ricky's going to Harvard. And one of the old boys said, kind of nodded his head and said, well, that's good. And it was nice. I mean, he was proud of me for going. And I learned some things. I think it might have whittled the chip down a little bit, but it's more attitude than it is anything else, and it's partly mine and partly theirs. And I was proud to get a piece of it. Envy partly, you know. I've always envied people their better educations, and I admit that. I'm jealous of it. I wish I had it. I wish I'd had 4 years or 6 years or 8 years to study and learn some things. Instead, I learned them in other ways. And that cliche about School of Hard Knocks, that's not what I'm saying. You know, I've listened to old men talk on porches a lot. I've listened to people who've seen terrible things talk about them in detail. And I think that's been my education. But I would have loved to have had 4 years to go to some place with ivy on the walls and listen to smart people talk about things. Instead, I got a year of it. And I got a year of it when I was 32 or 33, and that's okay.
Well, I sure have enjoyed this. Thank you for taking time to come in.
My pleasure.
What shall we tell people you're working on now? What will people look for next?
Well, I think the New York Times would fire me if they knew I was working on anything else. But I do want to do, there's a lot of ambiguity in writing a book, writing a nonfiction book. You can't wrap everything up nice and neat. You can't do it. And I'd like to write a novel. I mean, every Southerner wants to write a novel. And I'll do that probably over the next few years. And it'll be Southern and Gothic and dark and hopefully funny in places. And it'll be written in the same voice that All Over But The Shoutin was written in. Very Southern. And people who listen to us talk know it's genuine. And have some fun. But this time all the good guys win.
Great. Thank you again. Good luck.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
In our next show, we'll speak with one of the nation's most influential African-American novelists, Margaret Walker Alexander. Born in Alabama, raised in Mississippi, her book Jubilee, an epic multi-generational Civil War novel, is often compared to Gone with the Wind.